All right, hello and welcome everybody to the GPVWC Superleague Lights Round 13 here in the Marina Bay Street Circuit in Singapore for the Singapore Grand Prix. My name is Jacob Hancox, and hopefully joining me at some point during today's race in the commentary box will be Ewan Gale, but for the time being, I'm flying solo, as the drivers will be also flying solo in their own little qualifying sessions. We do, of course, have private qualifying here in Superleague Lights, and that's what we are about to get underway with in just a moment's time. But quickly, on the circuit itself, Marina Bay Street Circuit, one of the more difficult circuits on the calendar for sure. Definitely a test of endurance for these drivers. It should be, I think, the longest in terms of overall race time. It should be the longest race of the season. And with such a long track, with 23 corners all the way around it as well, there's a lot of concentration. You got to make sure you're keeping up in those cockpits. It's a lot harder to get the sort of muscle memory going, I find, on such a long circuit. So that could be something interesting to watch. A bit of a new challenge for some of these drivers. And then, of course, you have the ever-present walls that you associate with a street circuit as well. So we've got to make sure the drivers will be keeping their nose and wings and tires out of those walls so that they can keep racing around. We've seen a fair few incidents thus far this season in general in Superleague Lights. Hopefully here today, the drivers will kick that trend on the city streets of Singapore. In practice, which has just finished, Michael Ayers, was the top driver for mode. He managed a 1:37.091 in the practice sessions. That's a benchmark time we have to watch out for as we get into qualifying here, with qualifying just getting underway as I speak. Tom Stevens, who is driving today in his second race of the season only, he's participating for HM Engineering. He actually managed a podium on his first race, and in this practice session, he was second with a 1:37.200. So he might be one to watch, and maybe HM Engineering could snag one of their best results of the season with Tom Stevens here today. Meanwhile, Matthew Williams, championship leader, was down in fourth in practice, but that's not too bad of a place. And of course, it's only practice after all, as drivers are now getting out there on circuit for their outlaps. You can see there one of the V12 Crossfire cars going around. I'm just trying to work out exactly who that is. That might be Moritz Kropp. There's one of the drivers driving for Vito Crossfire today. And there you see Alessandro Quintai there in the Pescara. He is, of course, currently sitting second position in the championship standings. 149 points to his name. That puts him over 50, over 60, in fact, points shy of championship leader Matthew Williams. And with Williams snagging a win last time out, it's looking ever more difficult for the likes of Quintai and Ayres, who's only 1 point behind Quintai in the championship. It's looking very, very likely that they are really up against it when it comes to the championship standings. Hopefully for them, they'll be able to snag good results here today and get a good result over and above whatever Matthew Williams is able to offer. But let's stick then with Alessandro Quintai as we enter this first flying lap here. And also you can see Matteo Kiersmacher's in the corner. They both crossed the line at roughly the same time here then on board with the Pescara of Alessandro Quintai as we head through turn 1, very bumpy, 2 and 3. And getting it all hooked up on the curbing there nicely for Alessandro Quintai. Now the little kink of turn 4 into the braking zone for here, turn 5. Again, you just want to kiss the curbs. The flatter curbs you can run over, but most of them around this circuit will give you something to think about if you clunk them too hard. Through the kink of 6 and in towards turn 7 as we get turned in here. Bit of a moment there, bit of an oversteer moment mid-corner for Alessandro Quintai, but holds onto the car relatively well. More counter-steering on the exit there, but all just about okay. The wall there on the right-hand side gets so close as you put the traction down. And now as we get towards the bridge section, very tight and technical section of this track. It never feels good no matter how well you drive it. Across the Anderson Bridge and into the hairpin, the very tight hairpin of turn 13. And now just planting the throttle on what is, I think, the second longest straight on the circuit before we get now to turn 14. Another heavy braking zone. It's all very stop-start then for this final sector of the lap. A fair few 90-degree corners. We can see it getting hooked in there. And about to go under a bridge this time around with this left-hander. Very tight, the wall very close, and you can see Quintai giving it plenty of margin through there. At the moment, looking around, it seems like Jack Mayer had the fastest first sector, whereas Michael Ayres is fastest through the middle sector. But let's see what Quintai is going to be able to offer. Found the final couple of corners, going to be committed through there, crosses the line. And that's a 1:37.1 from Kiersmacher's to start things off. Ayres goes second, Quintai third, and then a big gap down to Jukka-Pekka Laulu fourth. And the rest of the drivers further than a second away. Now Matthew Williams goes and dethrones the Belgian at the very top. Jack Mayer crosses the line, and he is half a second shy of his teammate there. Now, a fair few other drivers out there. Hygo Poom currently circulating for TTF. Just looking at his sector times so far, it's not looking great, in fact, for Hygo. I think that first sector well off the pace indeed. So he's actually backed out of it at some point during this lap. A few more drivers coming across the line. Simon Frelich moves up there into 5th for Royal Blue Racing. I'm not sure if he's actually DNF from the session as he did so, though. Interestingly there. Might just be in the pit lane. Not entirely sure about that one. Here comes Douwe then for Zederik, as he will cross the line and slot himself into 13th position of the 23 drivers we have making up the field here in this qualifying session. Make that 24 as another driver has just entered the fray. Oh, and Douwe. Wow, okay, into the wall we go. There is at least our first driver into the wall. He just about struggles to get going again there. And there's no more front wing on that Zederik. So he's going to be having to head back to the pit lane before he can set any competitive lap times again. But after the first exchanges, it's Matthew Williams with the fastest lap time of 1:37.119, narrowly ahead of the 1:37.125 of Matteo Kiersmacher's. Let's take a look again to see what exactly happened to Douwe on board. Lighting up the rear tires, almost out of the braking, or out of the traction zone already, I should say, but not quite home and dry, and found that out to his cost with that mistake. I think Giuseppe Saracino has just started a flying lap then for HG Esports Blue Bolt. This is a driver who looked promising at the Italian Grand Prix recently. Looked good in qualifying. It all went awry in the race. And Giuseppe will be hoping to repeat the qualifying heroics without the downside of the race. 0-0 stuff it was at his home Grand Prix and his team's home Grand Prix as well. Here in Singapore, a little bit less pressure perhaps on the shoulders of Giuseppe Saracino, who really flicks out the rear end through turn 13. Definitely not the fastest way to take that corner. And it's probably not going to be a very great middle sector time here for Giuseppe. Having said that, it's not the world's worst middle sector time, actually, for the Italian driver. So he might still be able to register a relatively decent lap time once he gets through this final sector. Maybe a little bit of contact with the wall there into this tight section. Giving the walls plenty, well, not plenty there, really scraping up against it. Good driving from Giuseppe Saracino in this final sector. Bit of a wobble, and actually, he's decided this lap is not good enough. He'll be heading back into the pit lane instead. And so we'll see his teammate, Stefano Zanrosso, instead then. He's managed a 27-0 in his first sector. Not exactly fantastic, and he almost loses the car through, that was turn 11 there, I believe. As now into 13 we go with Zanrosso, and seems both HG Esports Blue Bolt cars struggling a little bit here on the city streets to keep their noses pointing in the right direction, but both drivers just about managing to do so for the time being. Zanrosso now comes to the end of the second sector, and he's about 3/10 up on where his teammate was, but this lap time's not shaping up fantastically for Zanrosso. Under the bridge we go, in towards now turn 19, and then 20, and then into 21, 22, and 23, this final complex double left-hander, and nope, Zanrosso decides it's not good enough for him either, and neither HG Esports Blue Bolt car will record a flying lap on this attempt. Now, Simon Frelick in the Royal Blue Racing car, one of the new drivers in this session, and he's already up there in 5th with just about 4/10, maybe more like 5/10 away from Matthew Williams' benchmark lap time at the moment. He's not found improvement through the middle sector. He found a little bit in the opening sector, and I think Frelick, yeah, he's going to be heading back into the pit lane. Williams is now on a lap, so maybe we can take a look here at Jukka-Pekka Laulu in the Royal Blue Racing car. Teammate for the day for Simon Frelick as he gets towards the end of the second sector, and he is improving. Modest improvements, but improvements nevertheless for Jukka-Pekka. Currently sitting in 8th in qualifying as things stand. He'd be relatively happy with that as the qualifying timer ticks down. 6 3/4 minutes remain. And with a long lap around here, that's fewer chances at a lap than other people, than you might get at other circuits. As Lalu coming round towards the final couple of corners here, and he will complete the lap. So he's happy with the way this final sector went as he crosses the line and moves up into 5th position. Getting closer to the real sharp end there. A few other drivers getting towards the line. Michael Ayres, here we go, purple middle sector. Big improvement through there, but he lost a lot through the first sector of the lap. It's all going to be up to this third and final sector to determine, and it is good enough as he goes pole for the time being, but only just. Williams just crossed the line and wasn't able to improve. There's Kintai, who headed back into the pit lane. Kiersmacher's still right there as well. Jack Mayer is purple in the opening sector of the lap and improving in the middle sector too. So let's see what he can do now, as Thomas Harvey just jumped up into 6th position, I believe. Amari Watson 7th, Tom Stevens 8th, Frelick 9th, and here Jack Mayer, currently the 10th place man in this qualifying, as he really rides those curbs through the penultimate corner, crosses the line, and he lost time on the second and third sectors, but it's still a respectable lap time for Jack Mayer in the second stacks. Sitting there in 6th at the moment and maybe putting himself more in position to help out his teammate in the race than he often has been. Qualifying hasn't really been great for Jack Mayer throughout the season, but the races have been fine. So if he can get a good qualifying, he could be well looking for perhaps his first podium of the season. Dara Tapper in the Zederick. He's also improving as things stand. Currently sitting down in 16th position, so he does need to find that improvement. First sector was good. Not amazing, but good. Middle sector, okay. Let's see what the final sector will do for the Dutchman. Crosses the line and goes 11th. So an improvement, a modest improvement for Dara Tapper. And I got to say, seeing how close all these drivers are in this field right now is very, very impressive, considering the length of the lap and the possibility, the capacity to make mistakes here in Singapore. I got to say, I'm very surprised to see 15 drivers all within a second of what is Michael Ayer's current provisional pole time, that 1:37.1. Here then is Stefano Zanrosso again, as he is still getting there. Much better middle sector this time around for Stefano, in the low 39s. But the low 39s, that's still like a couple of seconds away from where I think Stefano would want to be, really fighting the car through this final sector as well. You can see that HG Esports Blue Bolt seems to be a bit of a handful from qualifying thus far. 3 minutes and 45 seconds remain in this qualifying session. Will Zanrosso complete this lap? He will. He'll come across the line, and he'll move up into 23rd. So not finding enough on that lap. 3.6 seconds adrift. Kiersmakers, he's backed out of his attempt. Alessandro Quintai, he's on a decent lap, though, as he's looking good in the first sector. 26.4 from him. That is right up there with some of the fastest opening sectors that we've seen in this qualifying session so far. It's his best of the qualifying session so far. Quickly take a replay here. Take a look at what happened to Matteo Kiersmakers then. And, losing the car entirely. That's the second time we've seen a Zederic almost in the wall, but Kiersmakers keeping the nose clean this time around, but only just. Back now with the Italian Alessandro Quintai, second place in the championship, and manages a 37.3 in the middle sector. Could be looking to try and challenge the very top of the order right now. That's about a 10th shy of what Ayers was able to do in the middle sector, but the first sector for Quintai was about 2/10 better than Ayers' provisional pole time. So this final sector, if Quintai nails it, this could be enough to send him to the top for the time being at least. You can see him using all the road here. Now penultimate corner into the final corner. Beautiful double apex there, and he does go fastest by a margin. A 1:36.9 from Alessandro Quintai. That is comfortably faster than anything we've seen in qualifying or practice up until this point. Michael Ayers is out on his outlap right now. He'll be keen to try and fight back against that gauntlet that Alessandro Quintai has just thrown down. Tom Stevens is also going quickly. Not quite his personal best first sector, but it's still a fast one. It's only about half a tenth away from Alessandro Quintai in that opening sector. He rounds turn 13 without too much issue in that HM Engineering car. Heading now down towards the braking zone of 14, and he's found improvement there. 37.5 brings him right into play here for some of the very top positions in qualifying. Almost all of the drivers, I think every single driver out there on track right now as the clock is winding down. Tom Stevens, he's going to be the next one to register a good lap time, as he now enters 21, and then 22 and 23 coming up here for Tom Stevens. Committed as he rounds the final corner, all four wheels off track, and he lost time there in that final sector. Down in 5th for him, but still relatively good. Still, though, half a second away from Alessandro Quintai's offer at the moment. Ayers now coming to the end of his flying lap, or his outlap, I should say. Ready to get going on his flyer. Williams won't be far behind him on the road either. Those are the two primary challenges for Alessandro Quintai's pole position, I should say. Matteo Kiersmakers is also going to be one to watch. There you see Matthew Williams. He's actually just getting towards the end of the second sector of his outlap, so he'll be a little while behind. But Michael Ayers has already started this flying lap for the 86E Racing / mode outfit, as he heads through that first sector really close to the wall, extracting everything he possibly can out to the opening sector of this lap. And there you can see it. Decent lap time so far from Michael Ayers. A 26.4 puts him in the ballpark with Alessandro Quintai. He's just 0.03 of a second shy of the opening sector for Quintai, but Matthew Williams has gone faster than the pair of them by just a smidgen, 0.07 ahead of Alessandro Quintai's opening sector. Quintai is in the pit lane. He will not be able to improve as the checkered flag is now falling. Jukka-Pekka Laulu also has a good opening sector there as Michael Ayers through the hairpin, gets that all crossed up nicely. Maybe a slight kick of oversteer on the exit, but nothing he couldn't handle. Just looking down the order, Simon Frelich has had the fastest first sector of anyone right now. A 26.3 for him. The only driver in the 26.3s in the middle in the opening sector. A 37.3 in the middle sector for Michael Ayres. That's faster than Williams, and it's faster than Kintai. It's nip and tuck between Kintai, Williams, and Ayres right now. I think Kiersmakers might be out of it. He had a poor opening sector to his lap. And Lalu's a 10th shy in the middle sector as well. Amari Watson goes into 5th, but Michael Ayres might take pole as he crosses the line and does so by a 10th of a second ahead of Alessandro Kintai. And now it's Matthew Williams. Will he be faster? Let's find out as he crosses the line and didn't manage it. Lost it all in that final sector, 3/10 down. Simon Frelich couldn't make good on the promise of his opening sector. He's there in 6th. Let's say Matteo Kiersmakers is still there on his flying lap. Jukka-Pekka Lalu goes back into 5th position. I think Kiersmakers, yeah, he's just heading into the pit lane. Not fast enough for him. And I think with that, that's just about it. Pascal Polens is coming to the end of his lap, down in 22nd. He crosses the line for Razor and stays in 22nd. And with that, we have our qualifying grid order for the Singapore Grand Prix. And it's Michael Ayres that takes pole position from Alessandro Kintai and then Matthew Williams. It's the classic top 3 that we've got used to in the second half of the Superleague Lights season. And they are always giving us perfect entertainment out at the front. On this occasion, though, it was Ayres that got the upper hand. Williams with that poor final sector falling down to 3rd. There you see it. Ayres 1st, Kintai 2nd, Williams 3rd. Matteo Kiersmakers was close, but not enough in 4th. Jukka-Pekka Lalu with a better qualifying than usual for him in 5th. Amari Watson 6th. Simon Frelich doing a great job there in 7th. Tom Stevens 8th. Jack Mayer, he'll be happy to be inside the top 10 in 9th. Sandeep Singh, he'll be a touch disappointed. Didn't have cause to mention him throughout qualifying at all. He's there in 10th. Thomas Harvey in 11th. Well, of course, a podium sitter once already this season. Moritz Kropp, 12th. Frank Hamming, 13th. Dower Tapper down in 14th. Ivan Leonov, 15th. Pascal Schmidt, 16th, with Janis Volborn just behind in 17th. And then the PLS cars of Zubinski and Dabrowski, 18th and 19th, and Giuseppe Saracino in 20th. And then the bottom 4, Hygo Poom, Pascal Polens, Stefano Zanrosso, and April Karlsvard, the lone Cosmo Powerworks driver here today, at 24th on the grid. So with that, we're going to be heading into a little break now while the drivers get warmed up. But join us again in 10 minutes' time when the race itself will be getting underway. Okay, and welcome back then, everybody. We're back for the race itself here in the Marina Bay Street Circuit in Singapore. If you're just joining us, this is the GPVWC Superleague Lights Round 13, the Singapore Grand Prix. My name is Jacob Hancox, and joining me at some point, hopefully, will be Ewan Gale. But for the time being, I'm still here just on my lonesome. Here's a little rundown of the grid order. Michael Ayres there will be starting from pole with Alessandro Quintai alongside them. Matthew Williams, Matteo Kiersmakers third and fourth. Jukka-Pekka Laulu, Amari Watson, Simon Frelick, Tom Stevens, Jack Mayer, and Sandeep Singh rounding out the top 10. These drivers just getting themselves onto the grid here for what will be a test of endurance and a test of concentration as well at this circuit. Was an incredibly difficult one to nurse the car home to the end of. See the grid filling out, and they get underway now for the formation lap, and that is the mode of Michael Ayres leading them away. Here we go then. Ayres and Quintai first row. Matthew Williams, championship leader third, with Matthew Kiersmakers best of the rest in fourth. And we have Jukka-Pekka Laulu with a better qualifying than usual, up into fifth. Amari Watson sixth. Simon Frelick doing a great job for Royal Blue Racing here today, seventh, with Tom Stevens similar for HM Engineering in eighth. Jack Mayer inside the top 10 in ninth, with Sandeep Singh a touch disappointed in 10th. Thomas Harvey 11th, with Moritz Kropp driving today for V12 Crossfire in 12th. Frank Hamming takes 13th alongside Douwe Tapper, and then you have Ivan Leonov 15th and Pascal Schmidt, who is the second fastest driver in the warm-up. He sits 16th. Yannis Volborn, two-time podium sitter this season, but 17th on the grid here today, alongside Zubinski in 18th, Dabrowski 19th, and Saracino there in 20th. Argo Poom is 21st, with Pascal Polens for company on the penultimate row of the grid. And then you have Stefano Zanrosso and April Karlsvard rounding out our grid for today in 23rd and 24th. And we have to see, of course, exactly which tyres everyone's going to be starting this race on. As we expect everyone inside the top 10 probably going to have to go on those ultra soft purple wall tyres. Just getting around now to the end of the formation. That driver's making sure they have whichever tyres they have selected in prime condition and ready to go, raring to go at the beginning of this race. And of course, with a longer lap, we get a longer formation lap. So more time for the drivers to get in their own heads and to sort of lose warmth in the hands and to lose focus, maybe. You want to go straight from driving and qualifying to driving in the race. That would be your ideal situation. This way, your focus starts to slip unless you're careful. So you need to make sure, while you're on the formation lap, you're fully keyed in, fully paying attention, making sure you're not drifting off in any way, because you can't afford to have your mind anywhere but the exact right place when it comes to lining up on the grid, which they are now just about getting round to do. Michael Ayres leads them round in that red and black. Used to be an 860 racing car, now a mode car. And you'll have the blue and white Pescara of Alessandro Quintai for company. How many times have we seen these guys towards the very front of the grid? How many times have we seen Matthew Williams right there with them as well? Williams with 6 wins this season, Quintai with 2, and our pole sitter Ayres has 3. And it looks more than likely that one of them will win our race here today as well. Matteo Kiersmakers, the dark horse, in 4th. He'll be hoping to spoil that party and get his first win of the season. He's managed a pair of 3rd places, and that's it so far. The lights are now coming on. All 5 are on. And we get underway. Great start for Michael Ayres. Quintai is slow off the start line, and now already Matthew Williams is going to be alongside him. Looks like both the Royal Blue Racing cars might be getting swallowed up as well. There's Williams and Quintai side by side. Quintai still going to be going with him through the 3rd corner and actually fed Williams towards the wall there. Now Williams is going to be under a little bit of pressure from Kiersmakers behind, but they all managed to make it through at the front. It's Ayres from Quintai, Williams and Kiersmakers, then Laulu. It's the same order as we had. Frelick's actually managed to go up a position. He's ahead of Omari Watson and into 6th. Looks like Frank Hamming's had a bad start. Him and Ivan Leonov have fallen well down to the back of the order. They can see the fight between Tom Stevens and Jack Mayer as they head towards turn 8. It's very, very tight through there. But around the outside, beautiful wall of death stuff there from Tom Stevens to reclaim 8th position from Jack Mayer. So as things stand, only one change in the top 10. That's Watson and Frelick switching places. But outside of the top 10, there's been a whole lot of movement. Thomas Harvey's still there in 11th, but Yannis Volborn, he's up 5 positions already from 17th to 12th ahead of Moritz Krop in 13th. Hygo Poom's had a good start to make it up to 14th as well, with Dabrowski and Zubinski joined at the hip as ever. The two Polish drivers for the PLS Hyperion team there in 15th and 16th. But back up the front, this is where it really matters. And already, look at the gap between Michael Ayres and Alessandro Quintai. It's almost 1.5 seconds already. Ayres setting a blistering pace at the beginning of this race. And this is something we saw a couple of weeks ago in the last race. Quintai actually fell away from the race leader a little bit at the start, but then after falling about 3.5 seconds behind, held onto the tyres better, started coming right back at them. We had a fantastic finish in that race in Monza. So there you can see Ayres in your picture-in-picture. He's leading the way. Quintai second, Williams third, Kiersmaker's fourth, Lalu fifth, Frelick sixth. There's Frank Hamming. He's already out of the race. DNF, the only casualty on the opening lap, but Ivan Leonov, he's in the pit lane as well. He lost a lot of positions, and he evidently has some kind of damage in that Revo racing car. Slightly poor qualifying by Ivan Leonov's standards in 15th, and the race going even worse. A bad day for the Bulgarians so far. Still though, plenty of time for other things to happen. And maybe, just maybe, he can find his way back into this race. Mistake there, that's Hygo Poom. Oh, and he goes straight back onto the racing line where Mateusz Dabrowski was already sitting, forcing Dabrowski into the wall there. Hopefully for Dabrowski's sake, he hasn't picked up too much damage, if any. But I don't think Hygo Poom realised that the Polish driver was on his outside there. Otherwise, he would not have squeezed him into the wall like that. And Poom, making the mistake, lost out to Moritz Krop. And then almost lost out to Dabrowski as well. Just looking at the times at the front, Williams is now more than a second behind Quintai as well. Before we even get to DRS being activated, our front three drivers are outside of DRS zone of one another. Kiersmakers is still hanging on in there with Williams for the time being, but it's getting pretty close run there as well. Where it's not close run is, or where I should say it is close run, is Jack Mayer and Tom Stevens. Both of them really harassing Amari Watson for 7th position at the moment. With DRS about to be enabled, Watson could find himself in trouble in a couple of laps' time. Ayres goes fastest, but then is displaced on the fastest lap by Alessandro Quintai by just about 1/10 of a second. And the top three separated by just that 1/10 on that last lap around. See a replay then of the very beginning of the race here. We'll see exactly what happened. It's Frank Hamming who started in 13th. And oh, there's Leonov and Hamming straight into one another. Oh, a couple more cars collected in the process, actually. There's one of the TTFs. I think that's Pascal Schmidt. Oh, April Karlsvard knocks off the rear wing as Frank Hamming tried to reverse onto the track. And that was, I think, the Zederick maybe of Dower Tapper, because he's just coming out of the pit lane. So there was a Zederick involved. I think it must have been Dower Tapper. So I think that was Tapper, Leonov, Hamming, Karlsvard, and Schmidt, who were all involved in that incident on lap 1, corner 2. And here we are on board, or not on board, but watching Yannis Volborn and Moritz Krop. Krop actually really close up behind Volborn at the moment, after Volborn had a fantastic start to the race, but now driving a little bit of a train, and you can see struggling for grip a tiny bit through turn 13. As they head towards 14, Moritz Krop's going to opt for the outside line, forces Yannis Volborn to go defensive, tries to get the up and under here, but he can't quite manage it. Yannis Volborn defends that position stoutly, holding on to 12th for the time being, but this battling's great news for Thomas Harvey in 11th. He's starting to drive away from this pack of drivers in his TR Blue Box. You can see Moritz Krop definitely looks like the faster driver than Yannis Volborn right now. As Ayres sets the fastest lap yet again. This time, he has the advantage over Quintai and Williams by just that 1/10 of a second. There's still none of them within DRS range of one another. Moritz Krop very much does have DRS on Yannis Volborn for the time being. But here we see Matthew Kiersmakers, who does also have DRS on Matthew Williams. So Williams under a little bit too much pressure from behind to really rest on his laurels. He's got to be careful. Might be trying to save his tyres right now. But he needs to be careful not to allow Matthew Kiersmakers to breeze past him, because that can cause a big issue with his race. It's showing red tires there on the car on the ZRX, sorry, of Matteo Kiersmakers. I don't believe that's correct. I believe he is on the ultra soft purple walled tires. Thomas Harvey and Yannis Volborn are the leading drivers on the red super softs, or the red softs, I should say, probably by now. Going back to sort of 2017, 2018 parlance with the tires there. Matthias Dabrowski, Zubinski, Polenz, Zanrosso, Carlsvard, Tarachino, Tapper, and Leonov all on red soft tires as well. These super softs, the purple tires, and the top 10 are all currently running. Definitely going to be very quick, but not going to last for quite so long. Last time around, the fastest driver was actually Amari Watson in 7th, as he's trying to get closer to Simon Frelick in 6th. 141.199 was what Amari Watson was able to offer last time around. But this time, Jack Mayer had a purple first sector, and his middle sector is looking pretty good too. Just keep an eye here as they come across the line. Ayres doesn't set a new fastest lap of the race, nor does Kintai, nor does Matthew Williams. So that was a personal best for Alessandro Kintai, who's looking to close down the gap a little bit to Ayres. His teammate Singh picks up the new fastest lap of the race with a 141.051. Singh currently running in 10th position, has a little bit of clean air to Jack Mayer up ahead. As now it looks like Hygo Poom's actually been able to get past Moritz Krupp there for 13th. So that's the Estonian Poom up into the 13th position, Krupp falling down. And that's just the punishment that Krupp has to pay for not being able to get past Yannis Volborn sooner. And now Hygo Poom looks to try and rectify, not make that mistake himself. He tries to go for the outside of turn 6, and he's sent off track over the curbing, and now under pressure from the man he just got past, Moritz Krupp. Can't find a way around the outside of turn 7. With that, Hygo Poom holds on, almost turning into the wall there as he turned out of the oversteer moment. And there you can see the two Polish drivers, Dabrowski, Zubinski, and then Polenz as well, all very much in close contention, all very much driving to the rhythm of Yannis Volborn at this stage, who himself is falling well away from our top 11. Volborn, of course, is on the medium, of the soft compound tire, I should say, with Poom and Krupp just on the super soft behind him. So Volborn does have a bit of a task on his hands to deal with those guys behind him who are on those faster tires for the time being. Back up at the front, Michael Ayres still leads the way, 1.2 seconds to Alessandro Kintai. Then you have over 2 seconds of gap to Matthew Williams. Now, earlier on I was saying Matthew Williams, he's probably just conserving his tires, but he was 0.4 of a second slower on that last lap around than Kintai and Ayres, and he's got a lot of company right now from Matteo Kiersmakers. So he needs to be very, very careful about that. Here we see them. Kiersmakers right there with Matthew Williams. Not close enough to think about making a move, but Williams should be looking to pick up the pace sooner rather than later. 141.1s for Ayres and Kintai last time around, a 141.5 for Matthew Williams. Here we see another move being attempted, and just behind there's two PLS cars as well, giving it a go. Dabrowski currently ahead of Zubinski. Now Zubinski takes it away from Dabrowski. Dabrowski not finished with that fight just yet, though. He's going to have to be, as Zubinski holds on to 15th position. So the battle of the Matiuses, the battle of the PLS drivers, the battle of the Poles, whatever you want to call it, they're always together on track and giving us some feisty battling over 15th and 16th, the final point scoring position at the moment. Yannis Volborn was also in a battle with Hygo Poom at around the same part of the track, but he's been able to hold off the Estonian again. Yellows in Sector 2, only briefly. So whatever that was, wasn't a major incident. There's Polenz. Now Pascal Schmidt's getting involved. Polenz might be able to take opportunity here because Dabrowski ran wide through turn 14. There's just not enough space on this tight, twisty circuit to let Pascal Polenz make that move on Matthias Dabrowski. So we have the two Mathiuses followed by the two Pascals at the moment in 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th. And they are falling a touch away from the cars up ahead, but only a touch. Ooh, now it seems like Alessandro Kintai might have hit a bit of a tyre wear cliff. And oh! Moritz Krupp almost into the back there of the TTF of Hygo Poom, and this might leave him vulnerable to Matthias Zubinski. Can Zubinski find a way to punish Krupp for it? It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. So Krop gets away with that one as he had to run deep into turn 1, but that was a Code Brown moment indeed for the V12 Crossfire. And now just up ahead. Oh, and that's contact. Big contact between those two. They've both gone into the runoff. You can't see them on your screens anymore. But that is Hygo, Poom, and Yanis Volborn well down the order. At collision, Yanis Volborn had been defending that position well for lap after lap, but this time got tangled up with Hygo Poom. They're now down to 17th and 18th, hopefully without too much damage on those cars. And we'll see a replay of exactly what happened there. As here you can see it, Poom goes to the outside and just kind of cuts back towards the inside there. I think Yanis Volborn thought Poom would give more room towards that braking zone, and a bit of a miscommunication in the end between the two drivers. Doesn't look like a huge amount of damage for them at least, but it does end up with Poom ahead of Yanis Volborn. So in a way, I suppose you could call that a successful overtaking move from Hygo Poom, but he did lose a fair few positions in the process. Ayres still leads from Kintai in second. I said Kintai might have hit a tyre cliff. Nothing of it. He's just set the fastest lap of the race. A 1:41.0 from the Italian, as he was 2.5 tenths faster than Ayres on that last time around. Williams still really stuck in the 1:41.4s. Hasn't been able to go any faster than that at any point in this race so far. Matteo Kiersmak is behind him with a 1:41.2. And you can see the difference that's making on circuit. However, it just seems like there might be a setup difference between the Zederick and the Stacks right now. Kiersmakers never seems to have an opportunity. Further behind them, Watson and Stevens are battling over 7th and 8th positions, and into the wall almost went Tamari Watson. Had to back out of the move as a result, and Jack Mayer's looking to snap up what scraps he can. Will he go for the move down here? No, would have been brave there. Into turn 9. 10, now 11. Across the Anderson Bridge. Tom Stevens with that fresh grip on 7th position, having got past Amari Watson earlier this lap. He'll try and close down the two Royal Blue Racing cars up ahead, Lalu and Frelick. They've had quiet races so far in 5th and 6th, but that will suit them nicely. The team currently sits 5th in the standings. Yukpeka Lalu 5th in the championship, and he's 5th in the race as well. As further behind, here's Dawatapa trying to get around April Carlsvad around the outside there. That's going to be Saracino getting involved as well. And Tapper makes it 1 past Carlsvad. She'll try and fight back on the run down here, but no chance. So the move is done for the Zederick of Dawatapa. He moves back up into 20th position. But all of these cars towards the back, they're driving compromise races at this stage. Yellow's in Sector 2. As I think that was Saracino, actually. Saracino in the wall somewhere at the back of this. I didn't catch it. I didn't see if we saw that on screen or not, but that's Giuseppe Saracino out of the race. Second retirement of this race. And I expected more, to be honest. On lap 9 of 50, we've only had 2 of our 24 drivers retire, so I think that's relatively good going for a race here in Singapore. Jack Mayer now. He's the next one to have a stab at Amari Watson. Thinks about it late into the braking zone, but he wasn't close enough, and Watson wasn't fazed by the little juke of Jack Mayer. Didn't force him to go defensive or anything. Let's see the replay then of exactly what happened to Giuseppe Saracino. You can see there were the 2 cars we were focusing on. Saracino just locked up the rears there, sliding all the way through into the wall. And that was that then for the Italian out of the Grand Prix. More yellows. Not sure who that's for. Might be Dabrowski losing positions. He just lost out to Hygo Poom. Yeah, Dabrowski, he's out of the race now as well. So maybe I've cursed them there by saying it wasn't so bad, only having 2 cars retired by lap 9, because now we have a third, and lap 9's not even over yet. Not sure exactly what happened to Dabrowski. Managed to find his way ahead of Poom, as Zubinski has also managed to do a great job of getting further up. Oh, in fact, of course, sorry, that's Poom and Volborn. They fell down as a result of their incident, so scratch that. Here, though, in the battle for third, Matthew Williams still just a little bit slow at this stage of the race. Can't find the pace of the front runners, consistently getting gapped by those guys, and consistently under a lot of pressure from the Belgian Matteo Kiersmakers right behind him. But it just seems that Kiersmakers doesn't have the top-end speed to make anything of it. Here's a replay of Dabrowski. We can see just in behind his teammate. Oh, I don't know if he made contact with the wall on the entry, but you can see a huge amount of damage to that car. He might have tapped the wall on the braking zone there. Either that or he just locked up the rears. Let's take a look on board. I think he just locked up the rears, to be honest. Didn't seem like he made contact with that wall there. It was close either way. But no matter, same result for Matthias Dabrowski, and Hygo Poom is now in the pit lane. So it seems like a normal pit stop then for Hygo. Going from the softer compound to the mediums there. As I think we should properly be calling them. Calling them ultra soft, super softs earlier on, but I think we'll go for softs and mediums. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to go about this. It seems like that's how they're being displayed in front of your eyes as well. As in the lead, it's still Michael Ayres. He's looked imperious out here at the front. 2 seconds to Alessandro Quintai. There you can see that gap on your screens. It's not a huge gap. Ayres can still see Quintai in the mirrors, but the gap hasn't been closing down at any point. In general, it's been comfortably a 1/10 of a second a lap or thereabouts. On average, Michael Ayres has been gapping Alessandro Quintai. I think he can feel pretty good about the way this race is panning out so far. 1/5 of the race now done. 40 laps remaining as Matteo Kiersmakers heads into the pit lane. So he's the first of the front runners to blink. He'll go from the soft tyres probably onto a set of mediums for the second stint in this race. We'll see now. Yep, there's the yellow wall mediums going on for Matteo Kiersmakers. He'll come out back down in, I believe it's going to be 11th position. He'll be close to Morris Kropp. But I think he's going to be able to be ahead, slotting into that gap. No, he just falls behind there, Moritz Kropp. In fact, he falls behind Matthias Zubinski as well. That's Zubinski that just came out ahead of him there. So, will this mean that the front runners are going to feel the need to pit? The front three, Matteo Kiersmakers has pulled the trigger, and Williams will realize that he's very vulnerable to an undercut from the Belgian driver. However, right now, that undercut's going to be hard for Kiersmakers to pull off as he's got Zubinski for company. And the pole isn't exactly just going to jump out of its way. It's a tough circuit to make overtakes at. And I don't know whether Williams is going to know whether Kiersmakers is in clean air or not. If he thinks Kiersmakers is in clean air, he's definitely going to feel the need to pit at the end of this lap. But if he knows that Matteo Kiersmakers is in traffic, he might not have to be so worried. As Kiersmakers close with Zubinski for the time being. Still not close enough to make that move. This is going to be a whole final sector of pain now for Matteo Kiersmakers. Needed to be making hay while the sun is shining. Needed to try and get as fast as he could with the undercut. And Quintai is going to be the one to respond. Williams stays out, but Alessandro Quintai, Simon Frelick, and Tom Stevens all into the pit lane then. They'll all go for medium tyres as well, off of their fresh, or old, used softs, I should say. As they're going to come back out ahead, or at least Quintai is going to come back out ahead of Kiersmakers, who still hasn't been able to dispatch Matthias Zubinski. And there you see the royal blue. That's Simon Frelick just behind. He's going to be just ahead of Pascal Polenz. Tom Stevens will be just behind the Razor of Polenz then. As Kiersmakers opening up the angle for turn 5. This is going to be a good opportunity, the best opportunity for Matteo Kiersmakers to try and make this move stick, which he desperately needs to do. Goes to the inside line, and Zubinski's not going to fight that too hard. Matteo Kiersmakers makes that move, but he had to wait a lap before he could do so. And that's compromised his undercut significantly. Quintai, he's in a bit more fresh air. He can close down. I think there's a yellow for Sandeep Singh out there on the circuit. He just lost a position to Harvey and lost some time as well. There you see Singh just recovering. Thankfully, he doesn't get in the way of his teammate there. Not sure if Sandeep Singh has damage, but he's definitely had a bit of a spin or maybe even a trip to the wall. So we'll see exactly what happened then to Sandeep. As, it's just going to be a little spin and just a tiny tap with the wall. Won't be too much damage then for the Pescara. You see just really marooned in the middle of the track. Great evasive driving from Thomas Harvey not to crash into Sandeep there. As now Williams and Lalu into the pits. So they will respond. Quintai is out there. He's stuck behind Moritz Kropp for now. And Michael Ayres still stays out there, not tempted to go into the pit lane. Kropp goes into the pits himself, gets out of the way of Alessandro Quintai, who can really look to put the hammer down now. He had a bit of fresh air before he reached Kropp, The last time around, he was probably not faster than Michael Ayres in the second and third sectors. Here's Kintai and Williams, and just ahead is Alessandro Kintai. You can see how much time he lost with his undercut there. As a result of the traffic he got, he lost the 3-second buffer that he had to Matthew Williams entirely. And Williams almost made that work with the overcut. Fantastic stuff from him. And Michael Ayres, he's played a blinder right now. As long as he comes into the pit lane at the end of this lap, he'll have nothing to worry about from these two. There's a few people switching positions. Almost the whole field now on medium tyres. Just Michael Ayres and Jack Mayer in first and second, still on soft tyres in this race. Thomas Harvey, he's yet to pit, but he is still on mediums as well. He's the lead driver of those who started on those medium tyres. So let's see then, Michael Ayres. How's he doing relative to Alessandro Kintai? Honestly, Kintai's 3 seconds faster than in the middle sector. So 3/10, not going to be enough, I don't think. As that's now Michael Ayres does come into the pit lane. He will respond, and I think he has played this perfectly. Should be the exact right pit timing for him. Jack Mayer, I think, staying out there on circuit. No, he's also heading into the pit lane. So both of them, the final two cars on the soft tyres, come in and strap on a set of mediums instead. Here comes Kintai around the final corner, and Michael Ayres is already departing the pit lane. So Kintai tried to pull the undercut on Ayres. It did not work. Thomas Harvey leads the way, but Michael Ayres is our de facto race leader, as Thomas Harvey is still yet to pit in this race. Jack Mayer, pit stops haven't worked out quite so well for him. He is there with Amari Watson in 11th and 12th for the time being. Jukka-Pekka Laulu is ahead of Matteo Kiersmakers after things have shaken out here. So that's Kiersmakers losing the position to Jukka-Pekka Laulu, who is now effectively in 4th. Simon Frelich still there in effective 6th position. He's got Zubinski and Polenz behind him. So a bit of a buffer of cars that are yet to pit. He doesn't have to worry too much about the likes of Tom Stevens and Jack Mayer, because they're getting held up behind Zubinski and Polenz. Singh has just dispatched Zan Rosso there, and here we see Polenz trying to hold up Tom Stevens just a little bit more. No quarter given there from the Razor GP driver. He has to cut across the curb, and Jack Mayer's looking to try and take advantage. As they head in towards the hairpin, Mayer cuts across the nose, bravely cutting across the nose there of the Razor GP car, but he knew he had enough space to do it. And with that, both Stevens and Mayer find themselves past Pascal Polenz. Now, they just have to pull Zubinski ahead of them to try and dispatch. As is closing down Thomas Harvey then at the front of this race. There's Yannis Volborn and Sandeep Singh here. Not much of a contest as Singh breezes past. He's into 13th on a bit of a recovery drive now after that spin he had just a couple laps ago. Kintai and Williams well behind Michael Ayres at this stage of the race, so not really paying off for them, as their mistake from Zan Rosso allows Pascal Schmidt to get past, going under the bridge. And into 20 and 21 we go. Pascal Schmidt, ooh, very close to the wall there on the left-hand side. The driver's right. And that is the 15th position, the final point scoring position at the moment. Pascal Polenz is in the pit lane. So he's going to fall outside of that 15th position margin. There's Douwe Tapper in that Zederick. He was caught up in that incident at the beginning of the race. He'll be having to try and get past San Rosso. Zubinski there getting passed by Jack Mayer, who does the wall of death around the outside. Good stuff then from Jack Mayer, doing what he needs to do to get past the slower traffic so he and Tom Stevens can start to close down Simon Frelich again. As Douwe Tapper also getting past Stefano Zan Rosso. So now Tapper becomes the third owner of that 15th position in the last lap. And Kiersmakers, Douwe Tapper's teammate, is right here with Jukka-Pekka Laulu. Laulu got past him in the pit phases, and Matteo Kiersmakers will be very keen to do something about that. But we saw he was having a lot of trouble. He looked faster than Williams all throughout the first stint of this race, but he wasn't able to even remotely get close to passing him, and it seems like he might be having a similar issue here with Jukka-Pekka Laulu. Michael Ayres then setting the fastest lap of the race on his fresh medium tyres. And that is almost a full second faster than Alessandro Quintai in third. So Michael Ayres really gunning it right now as he closes in to Thomas Harvey, who currently leads this race. Quintai and Williams look like they might be able to challenge Ayres, particularly Quintai in that opening sector. But the pit stop and the attempted undercut for Alessandro Quintai has not paid off at all for the Italian driver. There then are Yannis Vorborn and Pascal Schmidt, 13th and 14th. Yannis Vorborn in that Razor. Yet to pit in this race, I do believe. Pascal Schmidt in the TTF just behind. Both cars currently on medium tyres. As Dow Tapper into the pit lane again. That's the second time this race for him. First one was at the very beginning though. So he'd been on those mediums for a little while. He straps on a new set of mediums. He's actually being held there in the pit lane for quite a while, Dow Tapper. So maybe some more complex fixes going on there as he heads back out in 19th position. April Carlsvard also in the pit lane. Moritz Kropp has fallen well off the back of the order. Not sure exactly what happened to him in that V12 Crossfire car. Oh no, in fact, I think I do remember what exactly happened to him, so never mind. But he's down there, down in 20th for the time being. Here's Leonov and Zanrosso heading down to turn 5. And they make a bit of contact! And that's big contact in the end. Zanrosso poked into the wall by Ivan Leonov there. No front wing, no rear wing for Stefano Zanrosso. Thomas Harvey now pits and cedes the race lead to Michael Ayres, who has a 5-second cushion to Alessandro Quintai in second. He himself has about 2 seconds to Matthew Williams in third. And there we see Thomas Harvey leaving the pit lane. Last of the drivers to pit, I think, maybe with the exception of Yannis Vorborn. He comes out down in 10th position. Yeah, Yannis Vorborn still yet to pit. Zubinski in the pit lane as we speak. And he'll be just getting out of there in a moment's time. Here is Vorborn, then with Schmidt, still frustrating Pascal Schmidt in behind him. As this is now the battle for 12th and 13th position with that pit stop for Matthias Zubinski. I think Amari Watson's had an issue. Yellow's in the middle sector and he's losing time. That's Harvey getting past him. And meanwhile, there's Vorborn getting finally beaten now by Pascal Schmidt, and it's not over yet. Late defense there from Watson, surrounded by TTFs all around him. There's Amari Watson, the remains of his car. He's DNF from this race, so he's out of here. Amari Watson, after a slightly frustrating first sector, and there's contact further back, as that was Vorborn again involved in an incident. I think it was with Hygo Poom for the second time this race. Hygo Poom and Yannis Vorborn come together. We'll see now what happened to Amari Watson first, as he is no longer in this race as a result. Oh, just tried to accelerate on the curbs. Heavy contact with the wall. Tried to get going again, and then decided to call it quits there. That's Amari Watson retired from the race. And Hygo Poom and Yannis Vorborn falling down the order together once again. Yellow's in sector 3, but only just for a moment there. So I don't think that's any big issue for these drivers. And now we're starting to get all these incidents we were maybe expecting. We'll see another replay here of what happened between Hygo Poom and Yannis Vorborn. Yannis is going to go defensive. Poom tries to go for the outside. No, that's just locking the rears for Yannis Vorborn. Locked up those rear brakes, and it just sent him spearing round into the path of Hygo Poom. Nothing that Hygo could have done differently there, and Yannis Vorborn, honestly, just an honest mistake from him as well. And Poom won't be feeling any more comforted by that, though, I don't think. And that would have been a very dramatic moment to see a car suddenly sideways in front of you in the braking zone. And Vorborn does now finally pit. Those worn medium tyres getting the better of him on that occasion, and he will strap on a fresh set of, I think it's actually going to be another set of the mediums here for Yannis Vorborn on lap 18. Yellows in sector 1. Who's that for? Doesn't seem like it's a big issue after all, so I think we should be okay. And now, Matteo Kiersmak, he's still there with Jukka-Pekka Laulu, and he still cannot make an imprint. Frustrating race for the Belgian, as he seems like he's one of the fastest drivers here today. He made a mistake on the opening sector of his final qualifying lap, and as a result, he qualified 4th. And since then, he just hasn't been able to make any inroads whatsoever. He must be running higher downforce than everyone else here, or something along those lines. Down on engine power, something. Because he is really, really struggling to make any sort of moves whatsoever, even though he might be the fastest car on the track, maybe with the exception of Michael Ayres. Fastest driver on the track right now, though, that's Thomas Harvey. A 1:39.6, first driver into the 1:39s. He's on fresh, soft tyres. And that is a nice lap time from Thomas Harvey as he's closing in towards this battle you see on your screen between Simon Frelick, Tom Stevens, and Jack Mayer. Frelick had a bit of a gap to Tom Stevens and Jack Mayer a few laps ago, but Stevens and Mayer have closed in nicely onto Frelick, who's there in 6th for the time being, with about 4.5, sort of maybe more like 5 seconds now, up to Kiersmakers, who is locked in battle with Frelick's teammate Lala. 12th and 13th positions, Pascal Polenz and Matthias Zubinski. Zubinski going to look for the outside line here on Polenz. Polenz forces him wide. And I don't think Zubinski was alongside enough to justify the space on the outside there. So I think Pascal Polenz will feel that that was entirely within his rights to do. As it does mean that Zubinski will have to sit and wait another day to have another stab at getting past the Razor GP driver. In the picture-in-picture there, you can still see Kiersmakers. Feels almost cruel at this point because he's just stuck. It's so frustrating for him. Zubinski, though, he's a bit less stuck. Should be able to get past Polenz at the next proper overtaking opportunity on the run towards turn 5. It's going to be a little while before we get to that point of the track yet. Gaps at the front remaining relatively constant. Kintai starting to gap Williams again, as we saw in the opening stint of this race. Kintai and Ayres, not really much to choose between them in terms of their last lap around, maybe a 10th in favour of Michael Ayres. But no big differences between those two in terms of lap time right now. And Kintai needs big differences because he's 5.3 seconds behind. That's the margin he's got to make up before the end of this race. There you can see how far up the order drivers have managed to find themselves here. Pascal Polenz up 10 from where he started. Zubinski trying to make it 9 though, as he is really close up behind him. Yellows in sector 2. Those are gone pretty quickly again. So hopefully whoever that was able to get going without too much difficulty. Now Zubinski with the outside line for 5. Oh, and they contact! Squeezed him on the apex there, and Polenz almost sent into the wall. Zubinski there takes 12th position away, but in controversial fashion, as now Hygo Poom finds himself once again tangled up with a Razor. This time, though, it's not Yannis Volborn, but Pascal Polenz. And I think Hygo Poom should be able to hold Polenz at bay. Doesn't seem like the Razor GP driver has a whole lot of pace right now at this stage of the race. 30 laps remain. It's Ayres leading from Kintai, and a bit of a spurt of speed being put on at the front by Michael Ayres. He's just set his personal best, and Kintai's had an off lap. So now the gap between them, 6.2, 6.4 seconds from Michael Ayres down to Alessandro Kintai. It's looking like a clinic of a race thus far for Michael Ayres. Plenty of time, still not even halfway into this race. So plenty of time for Ayres to make a mistake, to let his concentration lapse. But for now, he's doing a fantastic job in the lead. Here's Thomas Harvey closing in on the Mayer-Stevens-Frelick battle. This is going to be some of our next excitement in this race. Thomas Harvey has fresher tyres. He has softer tyres as well. But there is a DRS train in the form of Mayer and Stevens behind Frelick. And that will make it more difficult for Thomas Harvey to make any progress through that field. There is, that was April Carlsvard getting out of the way on the left-hand side. Stefano Zanrosso, by the way, he's also retired from this race. We now have 5 retirements: Frank Hamming, Giuseppe Saracino, Matthias Dabrowski, Stefano Zanrosso, and Omari Watson. As Hygo Poom leaves the pit lane for the second time this race, he's got another set of medium tyres onto his TTF racing car. And now here's Harvey within DRS, making another carriage in this DRS train. He'll be hoping that he can break up the train some way, somehow, though, because he needs to make, while these tires are still fresh and still in good nick, he needs to be making hay, but he's going to struggle to do so if he's going to have to be staring at the rear wing of that Stax, which is sideways at pretty much every opportunity right now for Jack Mayer. Going to be lighting up those rear tires, having those kind of antics in that final sector. Harvey is still close behind. But will he be close enough when it comes to the run out of turn 4 and into turn 5? Oh, sorry, I should say out of turn 5 and into turn 6, because the kink there, that's turn 4, this is turn 5, and we'll head towards turn 6. Not close enough on this occasion, Thomas Harvey. So you can see the DRS train coming into effect, a force field there. But Thomas Harvey is unable to penetrate for the time being. These guys have a big margin down to Sandeep Singh in 10th, who of course had that mistake earlier on in the race, but his blushes have been somewhat saved by the fact that many other drivers made worse mistakes than him. So he's not actually further down than he was at the start of this race, still there in 10th. Now, Jukka-Pekka Laulu and Matteo Kiersmakers are getting closer to Matthew Williams in 3rd. That's going to be an interesting one to watch. You see Dower Tapper in the top right of your screen in the Zederick. He's having a go at Hygo Poom for 15th position. That one solitary point on offer for a 15th place finish. Then you have this battle on the main screen here between Frelick, Stevens, Mayer and Harvey. The battle for 6th. And, briefly yellows there. I think that was just for the car getting out of the way. I think that was Moritz Krock there, letting all these guys through. And then you have Lalu, Kiersmakers, and Williams. Lalu getting into DRS range. Kiersmakers couldn't make any sort of imprint on Williams earlier on. Maybe Jukka-Pekka Laulu will have a better shot at it than the Belgian. Let's see, is Thomas Harvey going to be close enough this time around? The exit of turn 5 we go. Has the DRS wide open. Have to rely on better traction from those softer, fresher tyres. But it's not enough. In fact, Tom Stevens almost was able to have a go at Simon Frelick. Couldn't manage that either, though. So the status quo remains in this battle. Still, though, you can see how close they are right now, how tricky it is through these narrow city streets, because they need to be fighting for every little inch they can, particularly the likes of Thomas Harvey, who will be wanting to make moves, but knows that he has the disadvantage of the DRS train. He'll be desperate to try and find time, find that little couple of yards anywhere he can. But in doing so, you've got to be careful not to send your car into the wall. That is the sort of balancing act that the drivers are having to perform right now. Always a very, very big factor, of course, in Singapore, and a factor that several drivers have failed already in this race. And I would wager that we're going to see at least one more driver have issues of that kind. And now we see Jack Mayer and Tom Stevens both diving into the pit lane. They're tired of being stuck behind Simon Frelick, as Kiersmakers has also pitted. He has been bottled up behind Lalu. So all of these drivers now pulling the trigger because they have been stuck behind other cars for too long. They feel they need an undercut to reinvigorate their races here. As Matteo Kiersmakers leaves the pit lane behind Sandeep Singh, but ahead there of the lap car of April Karlsvard. Tom Stevens and Jack Mayer leaving the pit lane in the same order they entered it. And they've got a good bit of clean air as well. Only going to be Karlsvard up ahead of them for a little while. And Karlsvard will be getting nice and out of the way as a lap car. So Stevens and Jack Mayer can start to put down the power a little bit more now. And that's going to put significant pressure on both Royal Blue Racing cars. Jukka-Pekka Laulu will be under pressure from the undercut of Kiersmakers, and Frelick under pressure from the undercut of Stevens and Mayer. Lalu is still right there with Matthew Williams, as you can see. Brilliant off race, you'd have to say, from Williams. Still there in third, but in terms of pace, you'd expect him to be a cut above the likes of Jukka-Pekka Laulu and Matteo Kiersmakers. Hasn't proved to be the case in this race so far, and he hasn't had anything to match either Michael Ayers or Alessandro Quintai. Laulu doesn't pit, so he's staying out there. So is Matthew Williams. And this could be great news then for Matteo Kiersmakers. Simon Frelick does pit, so that might be why Jukka-Pekka Laulu didn't want to. It's going to be interesting to see then where Frelick will come out relative to those cars he was in a hot battle with just a lap ago. Frelick in the pit lane, straps on another set of medium tyres and heads towards the pit lane exit. Half race distance now. And Simon Frelick is on to a fresh set of mediums. Look on the right-hand side of that little insert there. Will we see anyone alongside Simon Frelick? No, we will not. And Frelick comes out ahead of Stevens and Mayer. So the undercut doesn't pay off for those guys either. Maybe issues with tyre warm-up coming into play. They didn't have lap traffic, or even non-lap traffic, I should say, to deal with. They weren't quite able to make that undercut work on Simon Frelick. Great in-lap then from the Royal Blue Racing driver. And yeah, frustration again for Stevens and Mayer. Michael Ayers is showing that there's plenty of life left in his tyres. He's just set his fastest lap of the race, a 140.543. That's not the fastest lap of the race, but it is a personal best for him. Jack Mayer has just set the fastest of purple first sector. You can see he can't really go any faster than Simon Frelick and Tom Stevens are going right now. Right up behind those guys. So I don't think he's going to be in contention to set the fastest lap of the race so far. Next driver to pit then is Alessandro Quintai. There's Frelick and Stevens going for it there. Stevens, there's not much space around the outside of this one, but he keeps the nose in there. Really well done. Brave driving from Tom Stevens. He makes it pay. Simon Frelick loses out. Finally, Stevens has been able to make that move. He's up into what is currently 8th position, but it's about to be 7th because Sandeep Singh is in the pit lane in the second Pescara. Alessandro Quintai has exited the pit lane in 5th position. He's got 10 seconds of clean air up to Thomas Harvey in 4th. So he doesn't have to worry about too much right now. Williams and Laulu both stayed out yet again. They're going to be very, very vulnerable to Matteo Kiersmakers. Their assumption must be that Kiersmakers is going to be asking too much of his tyres towards the end of this race. But here's Simon Frelick, maybe taking it straight back from Tom Stevens as he goes around the outside there at turn 6, and Stevens gives him the space. Very respectful driving between the two of them, and great stuff. Oh, until then. Great stuff until that moment for Simon Frelick. He finds himself in the wall. He's still going, though. Not too much damage in the Royal Blue Racing car, but it does allow Tom Stevens back through yet again. Out in the lead is Michael Ayers, 16.5 seconds to Matthew Williams, but he's going to be a little bit worried about the undercut from Quintai, but at the moment I think he's actually going faster just about out there on circuit than Alessandro Quintai. And here's Williams' teammate Jack Mayer, wanting to be the next one to get past Simon Frelick. You can see how he's all over the rear wing of that Royal Blue Racing car. And with Tom Stevens just about getting a second ahead of these guys, it should be an easy enough move for Jack Mayer in towards turn 6 on this next coming lap, as Laulu and Williams have both opted to stay out yet again. Last time around, Kiersmakers wasn't actually faster than either of those drivers. So that's something. Kiersmakers' undercut not really paying dividends at the moment. Back here we see Janis Volborn and Ivan Leonov battling over 16th and 17th for the time being. Leonov has that DRS wide open, but he can't get close enough to Janis on this occasion. Leonov, of course, driving a rather compromised race after the start incident between himself and I think it was Pascal Schmidt, unless I'm mistaken. Schmidt just exited the pit lane. He's down in 13th. at the moment, so back up into the points at least for the time being. Helped, of course, by the demise of a few other drivers. There you see Volborn going to have a bit of a task on his hands to defend from the charging Bulgarian behind. As Ayres is into the pits. So, Michael Ayres pits from first position in this race. Kintai had a couple of laps worth of undercut. I doubt it's going to be anywhere near enough for Kintai to really have pummeled into that gap between himself and Michael Ayres. As Ayres leaves the pit lane comfortably in second place. Matthew Williams continues on. Jukka-Pekka Laulu and Thomas Harvey both into the pits as Leonov tapping the rear of Yannis Volborn there. Trying to get past. Wasn't able to do so on this occasion. Williams now leads the way, but he has pitted one fewer time than both Ayres and Kintai. The 7-second gap between Ayres and Kintai has remained. In fact, it's now an 8-second gap. So once again, Michael Ayres does better by going longer. Fantastic race management and just driving all around, really, from Michael Ayres in this race. Kiersmakers was able to get the undercut on Jukka-Pekka Laulu, though. Laulu coming back out in 5th, where he was for the opening stint. So Kiersmakers will feel that's a righteous reversal of those positions. And maybe he can hope to get Matthew Williams as well. But key difference here is that Jukka-Pekka Laulu is on soft tyres. In fact, Michael Ayres is on soft tyres as well. Ayres, Laulu and Harvey all on soft tyres for this stint of the race, whereas Kintai and Kiersmakers and Tom Stevens all opted for the mediums instead. So this could be very, very interesting between those guys. And Thomas Harvey, by going longer, he's been able to jump all 3 of Stevens, Frelick and Mayer. So he can be very, very happy with that one. As he's currently on, I believe, fresh soft tyres. They're in 6th for the time being. Williams now pits, so he is probably going to be filtering out behind Kiersmakers and probably behind Jukka-Pekka Laulu as well. Laulu just set a purple middle sector. So Matthew Williams is going to struggle to hold that position from him. He might find himself down in 5th now as there's yellows in Sector 2 that are cleared away pretty quickly. And there is Matthew Williams. You see him alongside them. And he has lost out to both Matteo Kiersmakers and Jukka-Pekka Laulu. But Matteo Kiersmakers has medium tyres on. It's soft for Jukka-Pekka Laulu. But Matthew Williams has also opted for the medium. So he's not going to have an advantage over either of the cars ahead right now. So Matthew Williams struggling in this race. He's been bested in the pit stops, the second pit stop phase, by both Matteo Kiersmakers and Jukka-Pekka Laulu, falling down into 5th in the stacks. Just looking around the track, here is Jack Mayer, still bottled up with Simon Frelick. Thought he'd be able to get past him a couple laps ago, hasn't been able to do it, and you can see he's really nose to tail with Frelick. I don't know how, if he can be at this close to the Royal Blue Racing car at this part of the lap, how he can't find an overtaking opportunity at one of the more reasonable parts of the lap. I think Schmidt and Polenz just swapped position there for 11th and 12th in behind them. That's Polenz taking, I believe, or rather holding on, I think, to 11th position from Pascal Schmidt. The two Pascals still very much together on circuit for the time being. Michael Ayres setting the fastest lap of the race on his fresh soft tyres, a 1:39.2, not yet into the 1:38, but he's getting closer to it. Kintai just managed a 1:40.8 on his medium, so he is losing time hand over fist right now to Michael Ayres. Matteo Kiersmakers. I said that Matteo Kiersmakers looked like he might be one of the fastest cars out on this circuit, that he was just getting stuck in traffic. Well, Jukka-Pekka Laulu is trying to prove me wrong. He has the tyre advantage, of course, does the Finnish driver. But Matteo Kiersmakers isn't really at the same sort of pace, the same sort of level as Alessandro Kintai is up ahead of him. You can see Matthew Williams behind, not really closing in on this battling pair of drivers either. And maybe Williams has to worry about Thomas Harvey. He's coming in hot in the TR Bluvos car, currently in 6th. Fresh soft tyres for him. And he is raring up to the rear end of Matthew Williams as we speak. Gap between them currently 2.5 seconds, but it's definitely coming down. As there is Thomas Harvey. You can see there is Williams just ahead of him. Williams just did a personal best middle sector. Not as fast as Thomas Harvey, but faster than both Kiersmakers and Lalu up ahead. So Williams is closing in on these guys. And if he can get within DRS range of them, that's going to make all the difference in his battle with Thomas Harvey. And Harvey, he's very familiar with 4-car DRS trains. He was in one for a few laps earlier on when that was Frelick, Stevens, and Mayer. Now here's Leonov and Volborn. Another incident of contact for Yannis Volborn in the braking zone, but it seems like it was just a little bit of a bump of tyres. Nothing major until then. And Yannis Volborn fed out into the wall, tried to stay around the outside of Leonov. There was no space in the end. And Volborn loses out down into 16th. He's got another car, Dawatapa, right in behind. Fastest cars out there on the circuit at the moment are Michael Ayres, Thomas Harvey, and Sandeep Singh. The 3 drivers in the 39s right now. Singh in 10th. He's got 10 seconds to make up on Jack Mayer up ahead. And Jack Mayer's looking to try and make it Simon Frelick instead as he sends the move. And this time, finally, Jack Mayer is able to dispatch that blue car. And he moves himself up into 8th. Pascal Polens and Matthias Jubinski battling over 12th and 13th. This is Jubinski having a go at Pascal Polens. He lost out to Pascal Schmidt a few laps ago, who's driving away in 11th for now. And oh, big moment there in the mid-corner for Pascal Polens. That might give the opportunity for Jubinski, as Jubinski's going to walk for the outside line here, in towards 6, and around the outside he goes, bumping over the curbs, but he makes the move stick. Matthias Jubinski just about makes the move into 12th. Just looking now, Thomas Harvey's closing in on Williams. Yannis Volborn under pressure. He's been under pressure pretty much the whole of this race, Yannis Volborn. And this time it's Dawatapa in that Zederick on his recovery drive, and he will make the misery for Yannis Volborn get even greater. Volborn can't even fight back on the second time of asking. And Dawatapa is now the only recipient of 16th position. He'll be closing in on Ivan Leonov for an attempt at 15th and a point in this very compromised race for those drivers. Here we see Thomas Harvey. Look at the DRS he has on Matthew Williams. He's not close enough this time around, but Williams can't reach the DRS range of those 2 cars ahead. If he can't do that, here's going to be easy meat for Thomas Harvey in a lap's time. So this is really, really dangerous territory for Matthew Williams. The championship leader, he can afford 6th place finishes probably until the end of the season, but he'd like to not have them, especially when Ayres and Kintai are 1st and 2nd in this race. They are his primary contenders. If anyone is going to be able to bring the fight to Matthew Williams, it's them. And Williams does not want to lose positions in this race, to lose points that could prove valuable come the end of the season. Last time around, Williams slowest of anyone in the top 8 cars. A 1:41.267. The decision to go on mediums might come back to him at the end of this race, of course, so it's not all over yet. But for now, those soft tyres on Thomas Harvey's car are looking pretty nice when it comes to the battle between himself and Matthew Williams. Drivers already having stopped twice in this race. We may well see a third from some of them. Yet to see on that one. Of course, the fuel burning off does mean the tyre wear has decreased a little bit as the race has gone on. Pascal Polens and Yannis Volborn, the 2 Razor GP cars, still only 1 stop to each of their names, but the race is not working out in their favour. Seems like 2 stop, probably the way to go at this stage of the race. Thomas Harvey, not close enough on this occasion either. So maybe Matthew Williams won't be quite so easy to pass as I feared a lap ago. He's still falling away from Lalu and Kiersmakers. They themselves are not closing in on Alessandro Quintai's second position. Quintai, the fight's really gone out of him between himself and Ayres. Ayres has, on this third stint of the race alone, gapped him by a further, I think that's 6 seconds over the course of this third stint of the race. Look at Thomas Harvey, really close with Matthew Williams. And I mentioned it earlier, but Thomas Harvey, he's raced 1 race so far this season. Oh no, sorry, that's not Thomas Harvey. Thomas Harvey has not raced 1 race so far this season, but he hasn't raced every race so far this season. He has 1 win to his name 3 races ago. And since then, he's not really been able to get back to those heights. A DNF 2 races ago, and then a 19th last time out in Monza. This is looking much better, though, for the TR BlueVos driver. And if he does get past Matthew Williams, a podium's not out of the question for Thomas Harvey. He's been on a charge throughout this race, moving up and up and up, climbing the ladder. And what's to say that Jukka-Pekka Laulu and Matteo Kiersmakers wouldn't just be the next victims on his list? As that brightly coloured Stax racing car is doing its best to get the right runs out of each traction zone to try and hold that TR BlueVos at bay. Once again, he might have done enough further up, though. Jukka-Pekka Laulu has found the move on Matteo Kiersmakers. These two have been hammer and tongs all race. And this time around, it's Jukka-Pekka Laulu who claims for 3rd position back from Matteo Kiersmakers. This, I believe, would be Lalu's 2nd podium of the season if he can hang on to it. He's managed 1 second place very early on in this season. Since then, it's been a while since Jukka-Pekka has been on the podium. So this could be a big race for him. Matteo Kiersmakers, he's got 2 third places to his name, but I'm sure he'd love to make it a 3rd. And there you see Ayres in the top right. Untroubled, unchallenged. Just having a pleasant Sunday drive on Tuesday out there at the front in that 86 E-Racing now mode car. The red and black livery. And since Ayres joined the league in the 3rd round, it's really, it's been something we've got used to seeing him right up there at the front. Not always taking the wins, but always in contention. And 3 wins to his name so far this season. Thomas Harvey into the pit lane again, pulling the trigger very early to call to an end this soft tyre stint. He has been aggressive on strategy throughout this race, has Thomas Harvey. As soon as he gets stuck behind other cars, he pulls the trigger, he heads into the pit lane. Surely he's going to go on to mediums to the end of this race. 15 laps to go. It might just be yet another set of soft tyres. No, it's mediums for Thomas Harvey. Jack Mayer also pits. He was in 9th. And he now down into 10th. Sandeep Singh getting past both Harvey and Mayer by staying out for the time being. And it's medium tyres as well for Jack Mayer to the end of this race. So the question is, will Williams need to pit again? Will Kiersmakers need to pit again? Those guys who opted for the mediums a few laps ago, they might be trying to make those go to the end of the race. And if so, you've got to feel that the guys on the soft compound tyres right now haven't done enough. And if that's the case, if Quintai is going to the end on his mediums, Michael Ayres will probably have to stop again. He's on soft tyres. And maybe that 14-second margin isn't as major as it seems. Polenz and Poom both into the pit lane now. Leonov has also just pit for Revo. Polenz and Poom both back out on medium tyres for the end of this race. Yellows in Sector 1, those are taken away pretty quickly. Don't know who those were for, but whoever it was is not in too much trouble. Ayres is still building that gap out at the front. 16 seconds now between himself and Alessandro Quintai. Jukka-Pekka Laulu, since getting past Matteo Kiersmakers, has been able to build that gap, escape DRS range of the Belgian in the Zederik. And that Royal Blue racing car could be on for its 2nd podium in this entire season. Of course, Lalu is on those soft tyres. That's a big caveat right now. Will need to go on to mediums for the end of this race. Almost certainly can't make it to the end on that set of tyres. Kiersmaker's almost in the wall there, using every last bit of the road. But still not able to find enough pace to deal with what Jukka-Pekka Lalu's soft tyres can offer at this stage. Matthew Williams still falling away from these guys. Really just not on his day today. And I say that, and he's still having a perfectly fine race. A 5th position is fantastic, really, at Superleague Lights level. And it's more than enough to keep him top in the championship, of course. But you've got to feel that for Matthew Williams, 6 wins in this season, a win last time out in Monza. You've got to feel that that's what he's expecting. That's what he's aiming for when he goes into every single race. And before that first place last time out, he had a DNF, a 7th, and a 9th. He's been off the boil for a while. We thought he'd got back onto it with that last race and then with qualifying here as well. As Matteo Kiersmakers now pits. So he can't make it to the end then on those medium tyres. He'll have to go on to another set for the end of this race. Frelick into the pit lane as well, as he was getting harassed by Sandeep Singh. Kiersmakers, it's another set of mediums, so he's not even gone on to another set of softs to the end of this race. And I think those who opted for softs for that 3rd stint will be rewarded if everyone else has to come into the pit lane before the end of this one. Kiersmakers is still ahead of Thomas Harvey, and that's what's important for him right now. There you can see Harvey close in behind him. And if Harvey can just close in that last couple of tenths, he'll be in DRS range of Matteo Kiersmakers. But there's no tyre advantage this time around for Thomas Harvey. Not only is he on the same compound, he's got slightly older tyres than Kiersmakers. Fastest car out there last time around, though, was Thomas Harvey. A 1:39.258. So he's on a charge, but Kiersmakers with his fresh tyres should also be charging as well. And now Kintai still can't live with Michael Ayres. 21 seconds is now the gap between Kintai and Ayres, and I think actually Kintai has made some kind of mistake. The gap between himself and Jukka-Pekka Lalu has come way down. So maybe Alessandro Kintai with a half spin somewhere in the last couple of laps, because he's lost a lot of time to Ayres, and he's lost that same amount of time to Jukka-Pekka Lalu. Last lap around, 2 seconds off the pace. 2.5 compared to Michael Ayres for Alessandro Kintai, really struggling all of a sudden. Tom Stevens then pits for HM Engineering. Sandeep Singh will follow him in as well. There's a fair few cars in the pit lane. Jannis Volborn and April Karlsvard in there as well, complicating matters for some of our front runners. Tom Stevens and Sandeep Singh both onto softs for the end, so they will be fast in this final stint. They're back out in 7th. And I believe Sandeep Singh is going to be out in 9th there behind Jack Mayer, but ahead of Simon Frelick, who's dropped off the boil towards the end of this race. So Stevens on fresh, soft tyres has a bit of a margin to Thomas Harvey up ahead, but he could look to try and close that down. Here's Jack Mayer. He's currently ahead of Frelick by a little way, as Frelick did manage to actually get ahead of Singh in those pit stop phases. Jukka-Pekka Lalu, he's yet to pit for the 3rd time in this race, but he just set a fastest middle sector of anyone. A 38.221 in the middle sector, purple for Jukka-Pekka Lalu. And maybe he was holding on to a lot more than he was letting onto on these soft tyres. Really good stuff from him to find yet more pace at this stage of the race. Kiersmakers Harvey, they're on fresh tyres and they couldn't match it. Kintai pits, now Lalu pits, so he's just using up every last bit of freshness on his way into the pit lane. Williams will stay out there. Michael Ayres also staying out there, and I just wonder if Matthew Williams hasn't been strangely slow the whole time. Maybe he's just trying to make this 2-stop strategy work for him. Here comes Kintai then, back out of the pit lane. Ooh, bit of contact with the wall there on the pit lane exit. That's not what you want for Jukka-Pekka Lalu. But he's still ahead of Matteo Kiersmakers. That's important. So he has been able to retain that position with that fantastic in-lap, and he's on to another set of soft tyres. It's softs for Kintai as well in third. So they will be surely two of the very fastest drivers on this racetrack for the final 12 laps. So Ayres currently has a 35-second margin at the front of this race to Matthew Williams. They have made the exact same number of pit stops as one another. And you'd be hard-pressed to say, based on this, if I told you one of them was over 60 points ahead in the championship of the other, you wouldn't tell me it was Ayres that was behind. Ayres now into the pit lane for what will be his final stop of the race, but he doesn't really need to worry too much about that because he is utterly unchallenged, unfazed in the lead of this race. There you see him exiting the pit lane, green light, ready to go for his last few victory laps on those soft tyres. Maybe he'll snag fastest lap as well. As Williams rounds the final corner, and he is still staying out. Every lap that he stays out, he's starting to convince me more and more that this was all according to plan the whole time for Matthew Williams. It's not been enough to deal with Michael Ayres, of course. There you see the 12-second margin between the two of them, and Ayres is going to be faster than Williams at this stage of the race. But it might be enough to have him finishing ahead of Alessandro Kintai if he can make it to the end of this race. And I don't see why he wouldn't have pit last time around unless that was his plan. His pace isn't bad at this stage, 1:41.0. That's relatively good. It's only a second slower than the likes of Thomas Harvey and Tom Stevens per lap. And those guys had a lot of seconds to make up on Matthew Williams. In the first sector, Kintai, about half a second faster in the first sector alone. We'll see how much that's going to be in the middle sector for Kintai, but it looks like he's made a bit of a mistake, actually, as he's falling further behind. The gap between Michael Ayres and Matthew Williams is going to be increasing, of course. Ayres really just pushing it as hard as he can. Fresh soft tyres, basically a qualifying lap right now for Michael Ayres. As Matthias Skubinski there, you can see, leaving the pit lane. Currently in 13th position. Full second in the middle sector for Alessandro Kintai over Matthew Williams. With 10 laps remaining at this rate, Alessandro Kintai will catch Matthew Williams before the end of this race. Jukka-Pekka Laulu is not going quite as fast as Alessandro Kintai, but he should still be in with a shout of catching up with Williams before this is said and done. But Williams stays out again. Surely this is his plan. This was his plan the whole time. When he was driving slowly, I was worried it was just a flat lack of pace, but no. He was holding on, making those tyres last, flattening the curve, and we'll see how well it's going to pay off for him in these final 9 laps. Argo Poom is into the pit lane for the final time this race for the Estonian, currently circulating outside of the point scoring positions. Don't think he's going to have a chance of catching up to Ivan Leonov for 15th either. Thomas Harvey close with Matteo Kirchmakers right now, but Kirchmakers is just a little bit faster at this stage. Both of them on medium tyres. And last time around, there was very, very little to choose between them indeed. On that last lap, Alessandro Kintai set a 1:39.0, Matthew Williams a 1:41.4. So that is a healthy chunk of time, 2.5 seconds that Kintai managed on that last lap. This time around, he's managing similar amounts of time in the first and second sectors. The gap between the two of them just cresting 6 seconds right now. Kintai will close up to Williams before the end of this race. Catching is one thing, passing is another. But with the pace differential, you've got to feel that Alessandro Kintai should be able to pass Matthew Williams when he cruises up behind him. Meanwhile, Michael Ayres, who's on the same rough freshness of tyres compared to Kintai and Lalu, just went a whole second and a bit faster. A 1:37.9 on that last time around. That is really a qualifying lap time from Michael Ayres, I should say. That's already very, very fast. Would have been enough to see him in about 15th on the grid, I believe. And he might not be done yet. Kintai, the gap now 4.5 seconds. Every time that gap updates, another 10th falls off the clock. Although a couple just went back on there, but in general, a 10th is falling off more or less every time that updates. There you see Kintai still closing in on Matthew Williams. In the first sector, he gained a half a second. In this middle sector, he's been gaining a second in the middle sector on the last couple of laps. Let's see whether he's doing the same here or not. Comes to the end, and it's more than a second and a 10th for Alessandro Kintai. He's only getting faster relative to Matthew Williams at this stage. Now, Tapper pits. He couldn't make his tyres last to the end of the race, and I wonder if that's a bit of a warning sign then for Matthew Williams. Maybe he's going to struggle to make those tyres get to the end. Could be risking punctures. Coming towards the final few laps of this race, Tapper re-emerges in 14th, I should say. Argo Puma's just DNF'd. He wasn't in the points, but he now will be not finishing this Singapore Grand Prix. Sandeep Singh is joining battle with Simon Frelick. Simon Frelick, after a strong start to the race and a strong qualifying, has started to fade in the latter stages. Sandeep Singh still there in 10th, exactly where he started this race, and trying to make it 9th. Just another update on Kintai and Williams. It was another 2.5 seconds on lap 42 for Kintai. Closing in, reeling in Matthew Williams. Jukka-Pekka Laulu was only about 3.5 tenths slower than Kintai as well. So he's closing in with Williams at a similar rate of knots. Williams won't have to worry, though, about Matteo Kiersmaker's behind, I don't think, unless Williams' tyres completely fall off the cliff before the end of this race. Simon Frelick still able to defend from Sandeep Singh. Singh not really close enough on that occasion to make a move. There you can see, though, really trying to do something about the Royal Blue racing up ahead. Bit of a kick of the rear end there on the exit of turn 13. Low speed corner. Very easy to have that kind of issue happen. As Michael Ayres, seems like he used a lot trying to get that 1:37.9 earlier. Doesn't seem like he's been able to improve on that. So maybe we won't see him matching his pole time, which is kind of what I was on the low key hoping for. But never mind that. At 1:37.9, a special lap time late in this race for Michael Ayres. Kintai is just getting within DRS range now of Matthew Williams. Here we see it. From one Pescara chasing a car to another. But this time, it's over second and third positions. This is the opportunity here for Kintai. He might have to wait another lap for a decent overtaking spot. But you can see how much faster he is at this stage of the race. Visibly, he's clearly faster than Matthew Williams. If Williams can hold up Alessandro Kintai for a little while, it might well bring Jukka-Pekka Laulu into play. And Williams also needs to be careful that he doesn't lose too much time battling with Kintai, because if he does, that will allow Laulu to reach him, and maybe even Matteo Kiersmakers before the end of this race. So he has got to be careful. If he is going to fight Kintai, he needs to make sure he's either successful or that he doesn't lose a lot of time in the process. That is, I believe, the lap Zederick of Dower Tapper just in behind them. Oh, no, in fact, no, that's not the lap Zederick. Oh, no, it is. No, in fact, it's not. It's a V12 Crossfire, so scratch that. Sorry, that was a bit of a Braveheart moment for me there. Dower Tapper's going very, very quickly at this stage of the race, though. That's Moritz Kropp just in behind these two drivers. Kintai taking a tighter line through the first corner. As here we see Sandeep Singh still with Simon Frelick as well. Picture in picture, you see Kintai and Williams. And here you see Singh and Frelick. Kintai will be reeling him in here with the DRS. He's going to be close and maybe looking to make the move. There he goes to the inside line. Alessandro Kintai takes second position away. Steals it from Matthew Williams, whose tyres have just giving up on him. Just didn't give him enough pace in the dying stage of this race. Now here comes Tom Stevens on Thomas Hardy. It's a Tom battle this time around, and Stevens is the one to maybe come out on top. Harvey tries to hang it around the outside there. Stevens gives him the space, but Tom Stevens, with the softer tyres, is now up into 6th position. So Matthew Williams falls down 1 into 3rd. Lalu is 2.7 seconds behind him right now. Will he fall further into 4th? Will his tyres hold on until the end of this race? 5 laps remaining, but these are 5 of the longest laps on the calendar here in Singapore. Sandeep Singh still not quite able to dispatch Simon Frelick. And up ahead of them, that's Jack Mayer in 8th. Jack Mayer having qualified 9th. I kind of thought Jack Mayer might be able to put on a bit more of a showing than he's been able to do here today. Stuck in traffic for a lot of this race, actually, Jack Mayer. As we'll see now a replay. Here is Williams and Kintai. This is how Kintai made the move. Pretty bread and butter stuff, honestly, from Kintai. Taking the inside, braking later, and being able to cut across the nose of Williams into the next braking zone, meaning that Williams had nothing left to offer. And that's just the differential in the tyres. That's the difference it makes. Here now, Jukka-Pekka Lalu, the next one to take a crack at our championship leader. Kiersmakers is closing in as well. He managed a 1:39.5 last time around. Williams, a 1:43.2. Really struggling for lap time now, Matthew Williams. Those tyres are giving up the ghost entirely. And he might well find that Jukka-Pekka Lalu is the least of his concerns. Lalu closing in, has the DRS. Will he be able to get it in this DRS zone? Or will he have to wait a little bit longer? He's going to have to wait a little bit longer for the proper overtaking opportunity that is turn 6. And there you can see in the background, Matthew Kiersmakers lurking, shark in the water. He's coming for Matthew Williams. Tom Stevens is also unleashed in 6th, of course. He just got past Thomas Harvey. And he's got about 7, maybe 8 seconds up to Jukka-Pekka Lalu and Matthew Williams. But he is also on soft tyres right now. So he can look to try and eat into that gap as well. And if Williams keeps going at the pace he's at, a 1:42.6, he is going to be vulnerable. He stopped the bleeding on that lap a little bit. It was a second faster than he went before. But now he's got to worry about Jukka-Pekka Lalu. So surely he's going to lose time when Lalu inevitably gets this overtake done on the stacks in towards turn 6 here. Williams might just want to blend out of the throttle and let him past, in all honesty. It's all about damage limitation now for Matthew Williams. The podium is just about dead and gone as Jukka-Pekka Lalu sweeps around the outside to claim 3rd position, looking at maybe his 2nd podium of the season. His first was in the 2nd round of the season. It's been a while for Jukka-Pekka Lalu, but he's back on the podium for the time being at least. Now Matthew Kiersmakers is right here on his fresher medium tyres compared to the mediums, the very worn mediums of Matthew Williams. And if Kiersmakers gets past Williams here, Williams may as well have pit. 2 stops in this race for Williams, 3 for Lalu, Kiersmakers, Kintai, Ayres, pretty much everyone else in this race. Williams tried to go a different way on the strategy. And before he didn't pit, he was just behind Matthew Kiersmakers by about 2 seconds. So at the moment, it's still a net positive for Matthew Williams, but there's still 3 laps remaining in this race. And where is Tom Stevens in all of this as well? He might be going quickly. A rapid middle sector for Tom Stevens. He is closing in. It might not be just Kiersmakers that Williams has to worry about. And of course, while this is bad news for Matthew Williams that he's struggling this late on in the race, it's good news for both Ayres and Kintai, his main championship contenders. They will close the gap pretty significantly. And every position that Matthew Williams loses, that's more points that they are going to gain on the gap that Matthew Williams has in this championship lead. Keersmakers can't make the move. That is interesting, to say the least. Maybe Williams can hold off Keersmakers. A 142.9 last time around for Matthew Williams, but Keersmakers is also on mediums and thus doesn't have as much of an advantage on him as both Kintai and Lalu did. And it's hard to pass here in Singapore. In your picture-in-picture, you see the other Zederic, that's Dower Tapper. He is close behind Pascal Polens for 13th and 14th. But this is the sharp end. This is where the battle really matters for the championship implications. That's Tom Stevens in the background as well. The HM Engineering, red and white, getting closer. Not the car immediately behind. That's the lapped car of Moritz Kropp. There's now Polens defending into turn 1 from Dower Tapper. This might give Tapper the opportunity he needs down into turn 5 or maybe just into turn 6 instead. He's close behind the Razor as they enter what is the penultimate lap of the race. And Dower Tapper will look to the outside here. Sweep around the outside should be the objective, but he can't do it. Goes for the switchback instead, but I think Pascal Polens has snuffed out this opportunity. Good driving from the German as he holds off Dower Tapper for another lap at least. Meanwhile, Keersmakers, he's just got past Williams into turn 1. He couldn't do it into turn 6, so he did it into turn 1 instead. And now Stevens is right there with Matthew Williams as well. Stevens 2/10 behind Matthew Williams. There you can see it. He has the opportunity. Williams does have DRS, at least, on this run down towards turn 6, but he's going to have to brake so much earlier than Tom Stevens will be able to do. They're side by side through here. Williams on the curbing, has to be careful under traction, and that means Tom Stevens takes the position away as well. Thomas Harvey is 7 and a bit seconds behind, so I think that might be all the pain that Matthew Williams is going to have to face before the end of this one. But nevertheless, the decision to stay out did not pay off for Matthew Williams. He is now down a position as a result of taking 2 stops rather than 3. Here then we'll see a replay on the big screen of exactly what happened between Keersmakers. You can see so much better traction. It's not really even a traction zone on the exit of the final corner. But Matteo Keersmakers with a much better run, just better grip all around, allowing him to get past Matthew Williams. And then Tom Stevens did the exact same not long after as well. Here's Thomas Harvey then. And look at the gap. It's already come down by 2 seconds since we last checked. Ayres is onto the final lap of this race, but it's still the penultimate lap for the likes of Williams and Harvey. They're not lapped either, so they will have to go the full distance here. Dower Tapper, meanwhile, still trying to get past Pascal Polens and still failing to do so. Polens making a great fist of defending 13th place. Michael Ayres leads by 35.5 seconds. Incredible race from Michael Ayres as he's on his victory lap right now. But it's not over for Matthew Williams. Thomas Harvey is still closing down. Last time around, Thomas Harvey was 3 seconds faster than Matthew Williams. Make that 4 seconds faster, than Matthew Williams. Here's Dower Tapper again trying to make the move on Pascal Polens. And Polens almost loses control of the car, hits the wall, and Dower Tapper gets past him. The Razor standing up to the punishment of hitting the wall there, just about. As Singh and Frelick now battling, and that's Frelick. Contact with the wall on the inside there for him. As Michael Ayres is crossing the finish line to win this race in the most dominating fashion I have seen here in Superleague Lights. What a race from Michael Ayres. It wasn't exciting from his perspective, but it was cool, it was calm, and it was clinical, and it was bloody fast. Michael Ayres, well done. Take a bow on that one. Here's Alessandro Kintai, the closest contender to Michael Ayres in this race, but not very close as it came down to it. 35 seconds was the margin when Ayres crossed the line. Kintai claims second position, and yet another podium for him Jukka-Pekka Laulu gets only his second podium of the season for Royal Blue Racing. And that goes a long way to solidifying his grip on 5th in the overall standings. Kiersmakers, the driver behind him, on track and in the standings, claims 4th in the race. Tom Stevens with 5th. Williams was able to bring it home to 6th just about in the end. Thomas Harvey didn't have enough laps to close in on our championship leader. And now here's Sandeep Singh. He managed 9th ahead of Simon Frelick. Jack Mayer ahead of both of them as well. Singh was really closing in on him before the end of this race came. And then we got Pascal Schmidt, who's next to cross the finish line. It's going to be a little while before he does so, as here he is now rounding the final couple of corners to claim a good 11th place in this race for TTF Racing. Currently sitting 10th in the constructors' standings. Pascal Schmidt doesn't have a huge amount of points to his name, so that 11th place finish is certainly nice for him. Matthias Jubinski will claim 12th. Darragh Tapper 13th. Pascal Polenz 14th. And Ivan Leonov, after that incident in the first corner, rounds out our point-scoring positions exactly where he qualified in 15th. And outside of the point-scoring positions, only 2 drivers finished this race. Jannis Volborn there in 16th and April Karlsvard in 18th. Kropp actually DNF before the checkered flag, but still managed to go further in this race. Van Karlsvard did. Karlsvard is currently in the pit lane. So there we have it. The results of this race. Michael Ayres claiming victory from a huge margin. This screen doesn't tell the story, but Michael Ayres will know the story. Alessandro Quintai second. Lalu rounding out that podium. Kiersmakers couldn't quite get the podium in 4th. Tom Stevens, great charging drive from him in the latter stages to claim 5th. Matthew Williams gambled on strategy and it didn't pay off. He's there in 6th. Thomas Harvey 7th. Jack Mayer in the second stacks 8th. Sandeep Singh 9th. And Simon Frelick faded late on to 10th. Pascal Schmidt with a good race up into 11th. Jubinski 12th. Darragh Tapper 13th. Polenz 14th. Leonov 15th. Volborn 16th. Kropp will be classified as 17th. And April Karlsvard claims 18th. And then we have our DNFs. Hygo Poom, Amari Watson, Stefano Zanrosso, Matthias Dabrowski, the second HG Esports Blue Bolt car of Giuseppe Saracino, and Frank Hamming, who was the first retirement all that time ago at the beginning of this race. And there you can see some celebrations here from Michael Ayres. Well earned, I would say, from the British driver, claiming a fantastic victory. Once again, I'm going to say a fantastic victory from Michael Ayres. And now, I believe we can take some interviews then from a couple of our podium sitters here, as they have had a bit of time to cool off after this one. And I will bring them on in to the room here. So give me 1 second as I try and get our race winner into the broadcast room. Hello, Michael Ayres. How are you feeling after that one?
Oh my God, I'm feeling like on top of the world right now.
Yeah, I can imagine. That was by far, I mean, I've not been commentating Superleague Lights long, but that was by far the most dominating victory I've seen. I think it was 35 seconds or thereabouts at the checkered flag. Unreal pace from yourself. Is that something you knew you had in you? Is Singapore a track you've always liked, or what just fell into place for you today?
Yeah, I mean, Singapore has always been a great track of mine. I put, I think, even more effort into the setup here than I would otherwise. Mm-hmm. And it was just, yeah, everything just fell into place. You know, the car was on fire, strategy, the guys making the calls were absolutely perfect. And I think I've only done like a couple of races at Singapore, and so far I've kept my 100% win streak going. So I'm really proud of myself.
Absolutely, as you should be. And you mentioned strategy as well. That first strategy call in particular, the first pit stop, you stayed out when Alessandro Quintai came into the pit lane. Were you nervous at all at that stage of the race? Because Quintai, up until that point, he'd been relatively close to you. He'd been hanging with you relatively well. Did you know that you had more left in your tyres, that you'd be able to pull off the overcut, or what was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, so the first stint was actually quite slow by my standards. I think in the practice runs where I was still going maybe half a temp quicker, but it's always a little bit slower when it actually comes to the actual race. Maybe it's just nerves or just natural instinct or whatever it may be. And yeah, I think we had like +2 on the tires advantage, and then by the time Quintai pitted, he came out in traffic. I was told he came out in traffic, so we didn't want to pit. And the mediums was fresh mediums versus old softs wasn't that strong around here, so we saved the life in the tires for specifically that reason.
And then the second stint, you started to stretch your legs a little bit more, but it was really the third and then the fourth stints of the race, the very end. That's when you really were putting your foot down. And was that just? Did you sort of ascend? Could you feel yourself ascending to another level in that part of the race? Did those stints feel different? Because that was when you really started to balloon that gap between yourself and everyone else.
Yeah, I think mainly that was just down to the tires. When people were pitting for second sets of mediums, I thought it was very, very kind of very interesting, put it that way, because it was the whole time it was going to be soft, medium, soft, soft. There was no question about it. So as soon as I saw people on mediums, I went to the softs and just kind of had a little cruise to the end. Apart from obviously the fourth stint where I wanted to kind of do like a grand slam, pole position, fastest lap, and win the race. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, and I think that fastest lap time you got, that 1:37.9 was it that was the fastest at the end there. That was, I think, good enough for something like 15th or 14th on the grid as well. So very much a qualifying lap time for yourself there, and a respectable one at that. Congratulations again. Quickly talking about championship implications, because we are getting to the sharp end of the season. Of course, Matthew Williams still has a margin at the top, no denying that. But he faded late on here. He tried to pull off the two-stop, finished up down in 6th position with yourself in first. That's a healthy chunk of points you've taken out of his lead. Do you think you can continue to do that towards the end of this season?
Yeah, I mean, we will continue it. We will continue to try keep pushing him to the end. I think it's just still again slightly too far out of reach. But again, at the end of the day, it's just trying to get as many points as possible for me. I think it's going to be pretty much wrapped up, and then probably next race or in America or Kota. But yeah, it's just trying to get as many points as possible.
Absolutely. All you can ever do is try and get as many points as you possibly can and hope that others don't manage to do so themselves. Thank you very much for the interview, Michael, and congratulations on that performance.
Thank you so much.
All right. And now we will have one other interview candidate to bring to you today as well, in the form of second-time podium sitter this season, Jukka-Pekka Laulu. How are you doing, Jukka-Pekka?
Very good. It's like what a comeback after really difficult 4 last races where all of the kind of bad things has been happening all sort of directions, and it feels good to finally get back on the level where I was on the early on this season.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and just on pure pace as well, in this instance, at one of the toughest tracks on the calendar. Is Singapore a track you particularly like? Did that help you out here today, or do you just feel you've got a better feel with the car now, or what's changed?
No, I've been pretty good at Singapore always. For example, on R Factor 2, I got my first ever podium on Singapore. So I have good track record here, and last year, for example, I think I had the best driver of the pretty much full grid, and I think I had chance to even win the race. Obviously, I didn't get even a podium, so I was pretty sad about that. And this year, I just wanted to get what happened last year and how the last 4 races has been going. I really put a lot of effort for the setup and making sure that I would try to get a good result for once.
Absolutely, and it definitely paid off for you. Of course, you were battling all race long with the likes of Matthew Kiersmakers and, of course, Matthew Williams as well. Were you surprised that Matthew Williams went for that audacious two-stop strategy? Was there any point where you thought you might have tried to make just the 2 stops in this race, or were you always going for 3?
When actually it was the Kiersmakers who surprised me a lot. Like he did definitely put in like another role in the strategy game. bidding really early.
Mm.
And at that point, I was like thinking about it potentially changing for two-stop because I had pretty decent tower, and I knew I was already getting undercutted by him, and I also knew making overtake it's not going to be easy. But then when I was kind of stuck with behind Williams, he was slower than me. I got this opportunity to also go for the softs and try to undercut at least him. So if I lose one, I get one at least. And when I did that, obviously that worked well. But then at the end, when it became really obvious that Williams is going for the end, I was just like instantly, yeah, I mean, that's not going to work. Like, I mean, he can try that and he can probably go to the end, but I don't think it's going to work. And we saw what happened in the end. He was really slow and he dropped even more positions. So I think in the end, we definitely made right strategy calls all the time, and that's why I finished P3 and on the podium, and not somewhere like P5 or even lower.
Indeed. And well, thank you very, very much, Jukka-Pekka, and congratulations on your podium. It's nice to have you back on the podium.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we have no further interviews, so we will be wrapping up the show here. Thank you all very, very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I'm sorry that I could only bring you my sole voice in the commentary box here today for what is the longest race of the season. Hopefully, you didn't notice my voice giving out too much towards the end. And thank you all for bearing with me and for watching, and I wish you a good night.